The City of Lost Souls. In the bustling city of Havenbrook, neon lights flickered above crowded streets, yet the city was filled with lonely souls. Among them was Ella, a young woman in her late 20s who had moved to the city, chasing a dream that never fully came to life. She worked at a quaint bookstore on Wisteria Street, nestled between a cafe and an antique shop. Each day, she served customers who came and went, their interactions brief and routine. Despite the constant stream of people, Ella felt a sense of isolation that lingered long after she closed the shop, her evenings spent with a cup of tea and a novel that offered a temporary escape. Across town, Leo, a photographer in his early 30s, lived a seemingly vibrant life. His career was thriving, his stylish apartment overlooking the city's skyline, and his social calendar full. Yet he felt a gnawing sense of emptiness, as if he were always on the periphery, observing life through the lens of his camera, but never truly experiencing it. He moved from one project to the next, capturing moments that he was never really a part of, always searching for something that eluded him. One rainy afternoon, as Ella sat by the bookstore window, she watched the rain slide down the glass. She wondered what it would be like if someone came into her life and changed everything, like a scene from one of her beloved novels. At that same moment, Leo stood on the rooftop of his apartment, his camera aimed at the streets below, capturing the rain's melancholic beauty. He, too, was lost in thought, his mind drifting to the possibility of a connection he had yet to find. That day, they were both longing for something they couldn't quite name, their lives unknowingly intertwined by the shared feeling of solitude. Ella imagined meeting someone who would understand her without words, while Leo sought to capture that very sentiment through his photographs. Though they were strangers, both were waiting for a change, unaware that their paths were slowly converging. The city of Havenbrook, with its bright lights and ceaseless energy, seemed to move around them without pause. Yet, beneath the surface, two lonely hearts were searching for something more, something that would make them feel seen, heard, and understood. And as the rain continued to fall, it was only a matter of time before their worlds collided, bringing with it the possibility of something new, something real. Accidental encounters. A week after the rain, Ella found herself in the familiar rhythm of her workday, unpacking new books at the bookstore on Wisteria Street. As she reached for a heavy volume, it slipped from her grasp. Before it could hit the floor, a hand caught it midair. Startled, Ella looked up to see a man with tousled hair and a shy smile. "Looks like I was in the right place at the right time," he said, handing the book back to her. It was Leo, visiting the bookstore for the first time in search of inspiration for his next photography project. Their conversation was brief but genuine, a rare moment of warmth in Ella's otherwise quiet day. She recommended a book, and Leo left with it in hand, but he couldn't shake the impression she left on him. Her voice, her smile, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about books stayed with him. For days after, he found himself returning to the bookstore, pretending to browse while secretly hoping to see her again. It wasn't long before Leo worked up the courage to ask Ella if she would join him for coffee. Though hesitant, she agreed, and soon they found themselves meeting regularly at a cozy cafe down the street. Over steaming cups, their conversations moved from casual small talk to deeper subjects, books, art, and dreams they had not yet dared to speak aloud. Ella learned about Leo's life as a photographer, the way he used his camera to make sense of the world, and he listened as she spoke about her fears of disappearing in a city that seemed to move too fast. As they grew closer, it became clear that they shared a sense of loneliness that neither had been able to express before. Ella had always felt invisible, blending into the background of a busy city, while Leo felt as if he was always searching for a moment that would make him feel whole. With each conversation, they began to realize that they didn't have to face that emptiness alone. What started as a simple encounter over a dropped book turned into a connection neither of them had anticipated. They were two lonely hearts, slowly finding comfort in one another's company. With each meeting, the walls they had built around themselves began to crack, making way for something new, something that felt like the beginning of a story they both had been waiting to write. Unveiling the past. One evening, after a long, restless day at work, Ella found herself wandering the streets of Havenbrook. Without realizing it, her feet led her to an art gallery where Leo was hosting a small exhibition of his latest photographs. She hesitated at the entrance, unsure if she should step inside. Curiosity got the better of her, and she quietly entered, moving from one photograph to the next. The gallery was filled with candid shots of the city, streets, parks, and quiet corners she recognized. As she explored, Ella noticed a series of images that felt oddly familiar. The photos depicted scenes she knew well, but it was the final photograph that stopped her in her tracks. It was a picture of her, sitting by the bookstore window, gazing out at the rain on that dreary afternoon when she first met Leo. Shocked, she turned to find Leo standing across the room, watching her. When he approached, she felt a mix of emotions, flattered yet uneasy. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said softly, sensing her discomfort. "But there was something about that moment, something I felt I had to capture. It wasn't just the rain or the way the light hit the window, it was you." Ella was speechless, unsure of what to say. Had he been watching her all along, or was this just a moment he had stumbled upon by chance? The realization that she had been part of his art, without even knowing it, left her feeling exposed. They decided to step out for coffee, hoping to find clarity in a conversation that felt long overdue. Over their drinks, Ella opened up, admitting that she had always felt invisible, fading into the background of a city that moved too fast for her to keep up. She was used to being unnoticed, and the idea of being truly seen, especially through someone else's lens, both frightened and intrigued her. Leo listened, then confessed his own truth. He explained that photographing her was never about intruding, but rather a way of reaching out. For him, capturing that moment was a way to connect with someone who seemed to understand the same quiet, unspoken longing he carried. He was searching for something real, and in her, he had found it, even if he hadn't known how to say it aloud. As they talked, it became clear that both had been hiding, Ella behind her books and Leo behind his camera. But in that moment, with their pasts laid bare, they realized they didn't have to hide anymore. Finding home. Autumn painted the streets of Havenbrook in shades of orange and gold, and as the seasons changed, so did Ella and Leo's relationship. They continued to meet, but their conversations had shifted. The initial nervousness had faded, replaced by a deeper understanding. The bookstore, once just a place of work for Ella, had become their sanctuary, a space where they could be themselves without pretense. One crisp October evening, Leo and Ella found themselves back at the bookstore after closing time. The shop was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp. Leo had been unusually quiet, his eyes drifting to the window where they had first met. Taking Ella's hand, he led her to that familiar spot, the scene of their accidental beginning. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft but steady, "about how we spend so much time searching for something, but maybe what we need is already right in front of us." Ella's heart raced, unsure where his words were leading, but she held his gaze, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "I don't want to just be a photograph to you," he continued, "or a passing moment. I want to be here, with you, through everything, the good, the bad, and whatever else comes." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of something Ella had longed for without ever saying it aloud. For a moment, she was silent, letting his words sink in. Then she smiled, a smile that felt like the first breath after being underwater for too long. "I've always been afraid of being invisible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But with you, I feel seen, and that's something I never thought I'd find." From that night on, their lives began to intertwine in ways neither had anticipated. Ella no longer felt like a background character in her own story, and Leo found that he didn't have to capture fleeting moments anymore. He could live them. They decided to start a small photography and literary project together, blending their passions to create something that was uniquely theirs. It was a way to tell their story, not just in words or pictures, but in the way they complemented each other. The bustling city around them remained unchanged, but Ella and Leo had found something different. They realized that love didn't always arrive with grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it was in the quiet, everyday moments, the shared smiles, the cups of coffee, and the comfort of knowing they weren't alone anymore. In each other, they had found a home, a place where their lonely hearts could finally rest.